Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium, Sette. Happy New Year, and as always, thank you for offering me this opportunity to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights. And in this segment, we are looking to January of 2025. Now, I've talked about many times over the years how astrologically the day actually begins at the moment of sunrise locally and not at 12 o'clock midnight as we have been conventionally taught to believe. At the moment of sunrise, it begins the new day, which the day unfolds sunrise to sunrise and not midnight to midnight. So, on an astrological level, we factor in with a little bit more importance the moment of sunrise as the beginning of a new day, which, as I'm saying this, I'm being inspired to perhaps create a video dedicating specifically that understanding. Now, January 1st, actually, the first sunrise in the United States takes place on January 1st at 7:05 a.m. in Lubec, Maine. Lubec, Maine is the first point in the United States where we can observe the very first sunrise that takes place on New Year's Day, and that's 7:05 a.m. So that being said, we construct an astrological chart for that event, which gives us a backdrop as to some of the things that may unfold over the course of this coming year. Now, on a personal level, what I would like to address is at that moment, there is a very strong connection between the moon and Pluto. Now, I've spoken how Pluto has moved into Aquarius, and I do have the intention to be making a part 2 to my Pluto in Aquarius Insights video. Now, what I want to emphasize regarding that point is our creative process and our potential to manifest all it is that we desire. The manifestation process is threefold. The process is thought, word, and deed. The manifestation process begins with our thoughts and our intentions, and the intention element is what I want to highlight. Next, by the spoken word, followed by our deeds, our behaviors, our actions. Now, our intentions have a very strong connection with our emotions, which is represented by the element of the moon. Now, when the moon and Pluto come together in this manner, the emotions are incredibly strong, very strong-willed. Pluto is also the element that represents will and our willpower. This Pluto-Moon alignment offers us the opportunity to recognize how the creative process, how our manifestation ability begins with great passions, very, very strong emotions. That being said, we always suggest to recognize with what we cast in motion in the moment of heated anger. Because many times in those experiences, we miscreate. You see, what I'm emphasizing here is to recognize how great passion begins the process of creating great manifestations. So as we move through this year, and part of the experience of Pluto in Aquarius is understanding our spiritual power. How we are all, every one of us, no one left out, is connected to that source which created all things. Just observe everything in creation which exists on the earth as well as in the heavens. The element, whether it be God, spirit, love, the universe, however we would like to address that, we are connected to that source. We have the ability to create everything as it was created on earth and in the heavens when we understand the creative process. And when we're not understanding the creative process is quite often when we miscreate certain experiences in our lives. I've spoken of this understanding of being the master of our destiny for many, many, many years. Every one of us has that potential within ourselves to create and enjoy our lives precisely, exactly how we would desire to have those experiences. And we can be so when we allow ourselves to recognize how we are creating our realities and all the components involved in that creative process. So if you haven't explored these understandings of being the master of your destiny and the potential and the ability to create your realities, as well as understanding how we often miscreate our realities, this time now is such an auspicious such an auspicious opportunity to recognize that part of your human potential, specifically how great emotions, how that it is which we are so very passionate about, is such a important component of that creative process. Great emotions, great passions bring forth great manifestations. That being said, always be mindful of what you wish for as well as what you're casting in motion, especially in a moment of anger or rage, because many times those experiences will cause us to miscreate something and even direct negative energy towards another person. Be so very mindful of all it is that you are casting in motion, as I said, through the creative process of thought, word, and deed, especially now and in the times to come. With Pluto in Aquarius, we are so very much being offered the opportunity to really usher in the new age, the age of Aquarius, even though, as I have said many times, the actual age of Aquarius, by my calculations, may not necessarily be until about the year 2125. That being said, it does not infer that we cannot enjoy the many blessings of these times of enlightenment, of this time of oneness and brotherhood. First, we must have these experiences within ourselves, and then we cast all of that in motion to the outside world, and we infuse that age of Aquarius in the outside world, because first and foremost, we have done so within ourselves. As always, my suggestion: be in the world and not of it. Do not allow yourselves to be influenced or affected by the happenings and the trappings of the outside world. That's also being very much part of being the master of our destiny, when we do not allow ourselves to be consumed by the trappings of the outside world. Now, speaking of the age of Aquarius and creating through strong emotions, our full moon, our next full moon in January, is on January 13th at 5:26, almost 5:27 p.m., and it is in the sign of Cancer. Now, Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, forms an auspicious alignment at the time of the full moon, and this type of alignment, astrologically, it's referred to as a sextile, which is when two elements are 60 degrees apart from one another. So in simple terms, this full moon is very much an opportunity to awaken to the understanding of how, through great emotions, we create great things in our lives, and sometimes we miscreate certain elements that we may not necessarily desire when we're not understanding what we are casting in motion. This full moon, it's also an opportunity to become acutely aware of your own emotional wellness, or the lack thereof. Certainly it could be an opportunity to release any discordant emotional energies which don't always allow you to operate at a high vibrational place, which allows us to really be in a position of harmony and balance. If you are feeling a surge of emotions, and especially with the moon in Cancer, which is the sign which very much and most represents our emotions, as well as the moon being the ruler of that sign, certainly many emotions are being stirred up, not only within ourselves, but universally as well, so that we can release any discord which does not allow us to be the master of our destiny. You know, that Pluto and Aquarius element certainly is also another grand component of fully understanding that, as well as our spiritual power and understanding that our potential to manifest comes from something greater. It is always suggested that we observe these parts of our human potential from that place of love and humility, and not ego and greed. When we feel and we connect with all of those experiences from that place of ego, it doesn't necessarily serve a greater purpose for ourselves as well as for the highest good of all concerned. Now, speaking of Aquarius, in January the Sun transits into the sign of Aquarius, and that change of signs will be on January 19th at precisely 3:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is when this year the Sun transits into the sign of Aquarius. Sometimes it moves into the sign of Aquarius in the United States on January 20th. However, if you think about this, on January 19th at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time, halfway around the world, it's already January 20th. So, as I said many times, the actual date is not indicative of when the Sun changes signs. It's the precise time at a specific moment when the Sun changes from one sign to another. And that being said, as I said, on January 19th at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the Sun transits into the sign of Aquarius. And there's such a close proximity to Pluto at that moment as well. So certainly, you know, whenever the Sun transits the sign, we have the opportunity to recognize the components of that sign within ourselves. And as stated, Aquarius is the sign of the new age, the humanitarian. So certainly through the Sun's passage in the sign of Aquarius, we are offered the opportunity to recognize that humanitarian element within ourselves, the ability, the potential to be the change we desire to enjoy in the world. Aquarius is the sign which most represents change and great change and awakenings. You know, certainly this time of year, especially here in the United States and in the Northern Hemisphere, we are in the winter time frame. The winter time frame is that opportunity to really go within, be reflective, and allow yourself to really become even more clear with who you are and some of the greatest potentials of your human being. And when we approach the spring time frame, then it's a time to move forward with all that is that we reflected upon throughout the winter time frame. I always like to touch upon how during the winter time frame, I observe it as the more auspicious opportunity to do what we refer to as spring cleaning, because once the spring begins, we don't want to go into the spring time frame with dust and clutter in our lives. We'd suggest to really embark upon those cleanings, those clearings during the winter time frame, because it's that time to begin, the time to go within. So at the spring vernal equinox, we commence that season with a clean slate. You see how that all works there? And I also referred to a moment ago how Pluto is in close proximity to the Aquarius Sun, which on January 21st at 7:28 and 37 seconds a.m. Eastern Standard Time, there is an exact conjunction alignment with Pluto in Pluto and Aquarius connecting to the Sun in Aquarius. So there's an exact conjunction, which is a new moon alignment on January 21st at that set time. It's also kind of interesting that there's also Aquarius rising within not even a degree away from that Pluto-Sun conjunction. So that moment is quite the powerful opportunity to engage in anything that will bring you the possibility to cast in motion your intentions. whether it be at that moment lighting a candle that has been infused with your intentions, maybe writing your intentions out, and at that moment burning that piece of paper with those intentions and sending them out to the universe. There's no wrong or right regarding these demonstrations which give us the opportunity to cast in motion our intentions, whether it's lighting a candle, burning a piece of paper that has our intentions on it, conducting any sort of a ritual, whatever resonates with you. As long as you're allowing yourself to receive the opportunity in that moment to cast in motion your intentions. And again, going back to when I was referring earlier about Pluto being the element of great will and willpower, and the sun also being the element of our will and willpower, it's such a powerful opportunity to really tap into that component within ourselves and cast forth the intentions for you to achieve something magnificent in your life. That being said, I always suggest to infuse in those intentions that what you are casting in motion is also for the highest good of all. And you see how that creates a win-win situation when we perceive it all from that moment in time. Now, our next new moon will take place on January 29th, and as I always touch upon, regarding the balsamic moon phase, which is the last phase of the lunar cycle prior to the new moon. The balsamic moon phase begins on January 25th at 4:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the opportunity to energetically prepare for what is coming at the next lunar cycle, which begins at the new moon. The next new moon is January 29th at 7:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that new moon is in the sign of Aquarius. And actually, at the new moon, we have Pluto, Mercury, the Sun, and Moon all in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius is also rising at the time of the new moon as well. So that element of great change, great awakenings, which will usher in this time of this new age and this age of Aquarius, even though it may not necessarily be for quite a while. I'm always emphasizing that regardless of, especially when I'm referring to the age of Aquarius. Now, that date is of my understanding. Certainly, that date is questionable. I don't think, and by my exploration and my research, I don't think anyone really knows for certain when that time we will begin. I mean, we are understanding that we still are in the Piscean age, but it's also by my research and calculations that the age of Aquarius may not necessarily commence until about the year 2165. And with my astrological understanding, it's specifically connected with an alignment with Uranus and Neptune at that time, as well as a few other constituents. But what I'm emphasizing, especially at this new moon, for all of us to cast in motion that intention of this golden age, this age of enlightenment, that first and foremost must begin within ourselves. Whatever manifests in the outside world is a demonstration of what is going on collectively with the majority of the masses. Now, certainly there are the potential of certain situations to unfold themselves, but how all of this will come to play, no one even really knows for sure, because nothing, even many times we hear about a divine scheme, a grand plan, but it's my understanding that how all of that will unfold is not necessarily absolute and defined. And it's being created moment by moment by moment by moment. And when the masses are at a specific mindset, that's when we observe certain things taking place in the outside world. And this is why we are always suggesting to, in every moment of every day, to be in that place of love. Because when the masses arrive at that place of pure and unconditional love, this is what we deserve to unfold in the outside world. You see how all that works there? And certainly we don't discredit any challenges or difficulties. We always honor whenever there's any discord. We honor that and we choose to release it. Many like myself have been highlighting the potential of the coming of the golden age, and we may very well be approaching that time. Years ago, I wrote in one of my writings, and I have to see if I can find in which forecast I stated this, was that the January 2025 timeframe would usher in a new beginning, especially here in the United States. And that is also connected with certain cycles of evolution regarding the astrological chart of the United States. Why I observe that as specifically a time frame where we could very well begin a new time. And what I'm referring to is this golden age that many like myself have been observing has been coming together. For myself, I probably Spirit began sharing with me this understanding. It was probably almost about 10 years ago now when I began observing certain astrological cycles from a very different perspective. Some books that I've been reading that have allowed me to formulate this understanding. I always suggest researching and doing as much exploration as you possibly can, and also allowing yourself to arrive at your own conclusions. I've spoken many times that even though I am conventionally trained as an astrologer, I've worked with astrologers in my early years of development with all of this, but I've also allowed myself to really arrive at my own conclusions of how all this works, and especially my understandings of how I delineate, certain things, certain components on an astrological level, not to discredit the sages of the past, but to honor my own understanding and trust that whatever I share with you will in some sort of way, even if it's a small factor, will inspire you to recognize your own greatest human potential. I went off on a little bit of a tangent here, and I digress, but sometimes that's how it happens. Now, one more final point. We keep talking about Aquarius, Uranus, the Age of Aquarius. Uranus has been retrograde since September 1st, and Uranus will move direct on its path on January 30th at 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Whenever an element is retrograde, it's an opportunity for us to just kind of reflect on the components, the characteristics of whatever element is moving direct. With Uranus, again, it's about awakenings, awareness, especially the awareness of ourselves. The Uranus retrograde, for many of us, has been the opportunity to really recognize and understand and reflect upon how we are humanitarians and how we have the potential within ourselves to bring forth great change in the outside world. And certainly it is suggested to recognize we first and foremost need to be that change within ourselves, to be the change we desire to enjoy in the outside world. And that Uranus retrograde has been the opportunity to experience just that, reflecting on how every one of us has the opportunity to be the change we desire to enjoy in the outside world, and then see that change occurring in the outside world. Certainly first and foremost by being in that place of perfect love and perfect trust. As always, once again, I am spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium Ray Sette. I trust that whatever it is I share in these segments will inspire you to recognize your greatest potential, that every one of us has the opportunity and that potential and that power within ourselves to be the master of our destiny, and to be very much instrumental, or recognize how we are so instrumental in creating all our realities on a personal level, as well as the realities of the outside world. Many blessings, namaste, and I'm certain we will see each other again very soon.